Hello everybody, my name is Rush Bowen.
And my name is Luke Whitty.
Today we'll be going into depth of America in the last 40 years.
We will be analyzing the causes and shifts of America's national identity,
Both politics and power.
and the economic conditions.
Let's get started.
The 80s. It's often remembered as a decade of excess, an era when Reaganomics reigned and hippies became yuppies. We wore parachute pants, moosed our hair, and for most of the decade listened to vinyl. From synth pop to metal, punk to hip hop, the music got us breakdancing, headbanging, and moonwalking.
As America headed into the 1980s, 2 decades of social and political upheaval had left the nation rattled and the economy weakened. The hostage crisis had shaken American confidence, and many looked for a new kind of leader to steer the country into the new decade.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
With a former B-movie actor at the helm, America entered a new era of prosperity. The soul-searching of the 60s and 70s was over, and the nation was ready to enjoy itself.
The War on Drugs campaign was first established by President Nixon in 1970 with the signing of the Controlled Substances Act, or CSA. Nixon's initiative was in reaction to the abundant drug use in the United States during the 60s when massive cultural and music resurgence took place. President Nixon's focus was on targeting substance abuse was reinforced in the 1980s with First Lady Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign, which was an effort to educate children on drug abuse.
So open your eyes to life, to see it in the vivid colors that God gave us as a precious gift to his children, to enjoy life to the fullest and to make it count. Say yes to your life, and when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
The Anti-Drug Abuse Act in 1986, which established mandatory minimum prison sentences for certain drug offenses, was heavily criticized for having racist ramifications, especially towards African Americans. The war on drugs during the 1970s through the 80s and early 2000s exhibited data showing that people of color were disproportionately targeted and arrested. While the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Just Say No campaign was largely successful in preventing dangerous drug use, criminalizing recreational drugs at this time caused excessive incarcerations, especially in poor communities, and society to question the legality of drugs in the modern era. Ronald Reagan, the 33rd governor of California, won the 1980 presidential election representing the Republican Party, while FDR's New Deal initiative and Democratic presidents such as Jimmy Carter and Lyndon B. Johnson led the United States preceding Reagan's presidency. Ronald Reagan's Let's Make America Great Again campaign represented a conservative swing in the national consensus. President Reagan's conservative stance appealed to many Americans as a solution to the economic recession in 1980. Racial and class division erupting since the 1960s, and foreign policy disputes. In particular, Americans appreciated his aggressive strategy toward suppressing communist influence and solving the dispute with the Soviet Union.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to strawberry fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever.
Tragedy has struck the rock world as John Lennon, a beloved musician, political activist, and cultural icon, was shot and killed in his residence in New York City. A worldwide outpouring of grief ensued on an unprecedented scale. As a key member of the Beatles, his influence on music and the Cultural Revolution in the 60s impacted society's perspective on life, purpose, and politics during the late 20th century and 2000s, especially during times of war and hardship. His protests against the Vietnam War, the war on drugs, and his pacifist movement fundamentally shaped an entire generation of young Americans. Songs such as Working Class Hero, Imagine, and Let It Be became cultural icons represented Lennon's lasting legacy and career. There's a new disease plaguing the nation. As conducted by research by the CDC, there is an article published to address a rising concern for gay men developing a severe and deadly immune deficiency. This research was later established as the first awareness of the AIDS and HIV diseases. Within the first year of CDC's research, 130 of the 337 reported cases died. Famous figures such as Freddie Mercury and Magic Johnson has also been affected by the disease. The 1980s brought about some remarkable advancements in technology, particularly in changing the way we communicate, share and store information, and experience entertainment and media. To list off the most important inventions from the 1980s includes fax machines, video game consoles, cable television, CDs, and CD players, and most notably, microprocessors and the personal computer.
Rock grooves and make moves with all the mommies. The back of the club, sipping my wet is where you find me. The back of the club, macking holes, my crew's behind me. Mad question asking, passing, music blasting. But I just can't quit because one of these honeys Biggie got to creep with, sleep with, keep the ep a secret. Why not? Why blow up my spot? Cause we both got hot. Now check it. I got more Mac than Craig and in the bed.
While this technology was first introduced in the 1980s, it was during the 1990s when these inventions were refined and made applicable for mainstream everyday use. Text messaging became available on cell phones, computers became faster and smarter, and video games became increasingly popular with new and improved consoles.
Throw your hands in the air if you's a true player. To the honeys getting money, playing fellas like dummies.
However, the microprocessor itself revolutionized society because it stored millions of pages of data and code in a small, compressed chip. Previously, computers were massive and were difficult to use. The microprocessor made computers more compact and mobile, which allowed people to effectively conduct business and communicate faster. Communications and data sharing were redefined in the 1990s with the introduction of the Internet. The Internet carries a vast range of information resources and services, such as the interlinked hypertext documents and applications of the World Wide Web. In 1998, Google established a worldwide search engine to help navigate or conduct through the Internet, which expanded the popularity and reliance of Internet use. The Internet is hands down the most remarkable invention of the modern era, if not the most revolutionary in human history. It has transformed the way society operates and has expedited civilization in every aspect. Since the invention of the Internet and the application of computers in the 1990s, society in the United States have developed faster than it ever could before. The Internet opened an avenue for the world to learn, communicate, share, stream, and improve at an unprecedented level.
Still tote gas strapped with infrared beams. Chopping O's, smoking line optimals, money, ups and clothes, all a brother knows. A foolish pleasure, whatever. I had to find the buried treasure, so grams I had to measure. However, living better now, coochie sweater now. Drop top BMs, I'm the man, girlfriend.
Honey, check it. Tell your friends to get with my friends. We could be friends.
In 1988, George H.W. Bush defeated Michael Dukakis in the presidential election. After losing in the Republican primary in 1980, George Bush served as vice president to Ronald Reagan prior to his presidency from 1988 to 1993. This was the first time since 1948 where a major political party stayed in office for 3 consecutive presidencies. This represented America's continued conservative outlook on political affairs, especially on foreign policy strategy towards the Soviet Union. George Bush Sr. lost the 1992 presidential election to Democrat Bill Clinton following an economic recession and the decreased importance of foreign policy in a post-Cold War political climate. Bill Clinton becomes president in 1993, serves out 2 terms and has faced impeachment for presidential scandal.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
Look at you. Did you fall off?
In 2001, 9/11 occurred, killing almost 3,000 people, making it the most damaging terrorist attack ever.
In this segment here, because the other day I was at a town hall meeting, and I laid out my...
This led America into the war on terror, and certain government acts and agencies to be developed, like that of Homeland Security and TSA, as well as the Patriot Act being enforced, allowing the government to monitor citizens to avoid potential acts of terrorism. The war on terrorism consisted of fighting in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, and many million soldiers being sent overseas.
And dozens of other securities a year. And America barely noticed as its number one industry became boring old banking. And then one day, almost 30 years later in 2008, it all came crashing down.
Bear Stearns was in a death spiral, and the Fed brokered its sale.
The worst financial crisis in modern times. Certainly the largest financial disaster in decades in this country, and perhaps the end of an era in American business.
In the end, Louis Ranieri's mortgage-backed security mutated into a monstrosity that collapsed the whole world economy. And none of the experts or leaders or talking heads had a clue it was coming. I'm guessing most of you still don't really know what happened. Yeah, you got a soundbite you repeat so you don't sound dumb, but come on.
Our financial institutions are strong.
But there were some who saw it coming.
The financial crisis of 2008 is the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression of 1929. It occurred despite the Federal Reserve and Treasury Department efforts to prevent it. It led to the Great Recession. That's when housing prices fell 31.8%, more than the price plunge during the Depression. Elected in 2008, Barack Obama takes on the campaign slogan of hope and tries to pass universal health care, but it did not succeed. He is very influential as the first black president.
Someday I wanna wear a starry crown.
Someday, I wanna lay down like God did on Sunday. Sundays, I remember 3 songs. Sundays, that way, yeah, way, that is.
My fellow Americans, I have not been entirely truthful with you. I did gagoogity that girl. I geschmoigitied her geflavority with my googus. And I am sorry.
Someday, I wanna tell everybody, someday, I wanna hit the red dot and everybody, someday.